Harley Davidson, the motorcycle that became a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and America.
Don't worry.
I get $10 on pump 2. Susie?
Pump all the gas you can hold.
Quick one. This bit isn't sponsored, but it is my personal recommendation. I use the high-low band for blood pressure tracking, and it's honestly been a godsend for me. Super easy to use, and I get a much more realistic picture than a one-off reading at the doctor. If you use my link, you get 20% off plus a 12-month subscription, and I get £25 if your referral is successful. So thanks if you do. The link's in the description. On with the video. There are motorcycle companies, and then there's Harley Davidson, a name that doesn't just describe a machine, but an entire way of looking at the road. For more than 120 years, Harley Davidson has been linked with freedom, rebellion, police patrols, soldiers, outlaws, Hollywood, highways, leather jackets, and the thunder of a V-twin engine echoing across America. But the story of Harley Davidson isn't just the story of a motorcycle brand. It's the story of a small wooden shed in Milwaukee, 2 world wars, a battle against British and Japanese competition, a near-death experience under corporate ownership, and a film called Easy Rider, which turned the Harley Davidson chopper, the Captain America, into one of the most powerful symbols of counterculture ever put on screen. And then, just a few years later, Electra Glide in blue showed the other side of the same machine. Not the Outlaw's Harley, but the authority figure's Harley. Same brand, same rumble, 2 completely different versions of America. The Harley Davidson story begins in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the early years of the 20th century. In 1901, William S. Harley and Arthur Davidson were working on the idea of fitting an engine to a bicycle. By 1903, with help from Arthur's brothers, Walter and William Davidson, the first Harley Davidson motorcycle had been built. The company itself traces its beginnings to 1903, with its earliest work taking place in a small wooden shed behind the Davidson family home. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't corporate, it wasn't lifestyle branding. It was engineering ambition and a simple idea. Take the bicycle and give it power. That first workshop has become part of the Harley Davidson legend. A tiny building, often described as a 10 by 15 foot shed, became the birthplace of one of the most famous motorcycle companies in the world. In 1907, Harley Davidson was officially incorporated, with Walter Davidson becoming the first president. Arthur Davidson handled sales, William Davidson managed operations, and William Harley became chief engineer. And from the very beginning, Harley Davidson wasn't just trying to build a motorised bicycle. It was trying to build something stronger, something tougher, something that could survive American roads. One of the great turning points came in 1909 when Harley Davidson introduced its first V-twin engine. That engine layout would become central to the Harley identity, 2 cylinders arranged in a V. But this way, not that way. A deep mechanical pulse, torque rather than delicacy, character rather than smooth silence. Over time, the V-twin became more than an engine. It became Harley Davidson's voice. In the early decades, motorcycles were not lifestyle accessories. They were tools. People used them for transport, work, racing, military service and policing. And Harley Davidson quickly understood something important. If a motorcycle could prove itself under pressure, it could earn trust. Racing helped, reliability helped, but war would eventually change everything. During the First World War, Harley Davidson supplied motorcycles to the US military. By 1917, a major part of the company's output was going to the armed forces, and Harley also operated a service school in Milwaukee to train army mechanics. That mattered because when the soldiers returned home, many of them had seen motorcycles used as serious machines. Not toys, not novelties, machines that could carry messages, patrol roads, and keep moving in harsh conditions. The connection between Harley Davidson and military service grew even stronger during the Second World War. The famous Harley Davidson WLA became one of the most recognisable American military motorcycles of the era. It carried soldiers, dispatches and equipment, and after the war thousands of men came back with mechanical skills, a taste for speed and a different attitude to ordinary civilian life. That post-war world would shape the next phase of motorcycle culture. The Harley was no longer just a machine, it was becoming a badge. After the war, motorcycle clubs grew across America. For many riders, the motorcycle offered something cars couldn't. A car was a box. A motorcycle was exposure. You felt the weather, you felt the road, you felt the danger. I can certainly testify to the danger. 1976, we had a very, very hot summer. You know, before climate change in 1976, when there was that really hot summer, I was out on my motorbike, dressed very much like I am now, short sleeve shirt. There was a bend, Kirkham Prison, and it's an S-bend. Lean over as you're going round. As I leaned over, the tarmac had melted because it was so hot, and I did what they call a low side. Like, bike didn't grab and flip me off, it slid like so. On my side, my arm here, I don't know if you can see it there, but I scraped it all nearly down to the bone. It still won't get sunburnt now. It's all down my left arm there. And that was very difficult because my mum didn't want me to have a motorbike. So I kept it at my friend's house, and I used to go out, go and get my motorbike and then go for a blast. So it was very difficult for about the next 6 weeks trying to get my arm bandaged and keep it from my mum. That's the danger of motorbikes. But the absolute fun and the feeling of freedom when you're on a bike, if you like bikes, you'll understand this. And also, other bikers, this thing with EV drivers in ICE cars, I don't know whether it's the same with electric motorbikes. I can't imagine it is. But when you go to a meet, there's all different sorts of people. If you're on a motorbike, it doesn't matter. Everybody's friendly. You're welcomed. Go up to the cafe, have a sausage sandwich, talk to people, talk to them about the bikes. It's a great culture. And I'll also cut something that I saw something on the internet the other day, and it was about, I'm filling up, it was about a lady and a daughter who helped a biker who'd had a crash, and they helped him survive, and months later bikers are a different breed completely. Just a lot of good spirit, a lot. I just wish that could be the same between electric car people and ordinary car people. But it just seems that there's such a divide, it'll never be sorted. But anyway, the danger became part of the appeal. By the late 1940s and 1950s, the image of the biker began to change. It was no longer just about transport or sport, it became about identity. The motorcycle rider became the outsider, the man who didn't fit neatly into suburban America, the man who didn't want a white picket fence, a quiet lawn, and a sensible saloon car. Harley Davidson benefited from this mythology, but it also had to live with it, because the outlaw image made Harley exciting, but it also made Harley controversial. The bikes were big, loud, mechanical and American, and the people who rode them were increasingly portrayed as rebels. And quite funny, because when me and my girlfriend and her daughter went to California, I wanted to stop at Jack's Ranch Diner, and that was where James Dean crashed and died, and there's a monument there. We stopped, looked at the monument, then I went inside, and as we were sat there, 4 people turned up on 2 Harley Davidsons. Two couples turned up on 2 Harley Davidsons, and these Harley Davidsons looked beautiful. I couldn't help myself. They went and sat down, and the biker chicks, but they were probably, at the time, they were probably my age. And I went out to look at the bikes, and they were worried that I was going to vandalise the bikes. And my girlfriend's daughter heard them saying something, and she just said, "Don't worry about him, he just loves motorbikes." And that was it. And then we got talking. They were lovely people, just out for a ride on the Harleys. Hollywood noticed. And when Hollywood notices something, it can turn a machine into a myth. By the 1950s and 1960s, Harley Davidson faced serious competition. British brands like Triumph, BSA, bit stuck anyway, and Norton were building lighter, faster bikes that appealed to young riders. They had a different image, sharp, nimble, sporty. Harley Davidson was associated with heavy American iron, but Harley had the answer. The Sportster arrived in the late 1950s and became one of the company's most important models. It was leaner, more aggressive, and it gave Harley a machine that could speak to riders who wanted performance as well as image. But even then, the Harley Davidson story was moving in 2 different directions. On one side, Harley was a manufacturer trying to compete in a changing market. On the other, Harley was becoming something far more powerful than a product. It was becoming a cultural symbol, and in 1969, one film would change everything. I was 11. In 1969, Easy Rider arrived, directed by Dennis Hopper, starring Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. The film followed 2 bikers. Jack Nicholson was in it as well. The film followed 2 bikers travelling across America after a drug deal, searching for freedom and meaning in a country that seemed to be tearing itself apart. The motorcycles became as important as the actors. Peter Fonda's bike, known as Captain America, was a stretched Harley Davidson chopper with long forks, high bars, and a Stars and Stripes fuel tank. The bikes used in the film were built by Cliff, Sonny, Vors, and Ben Hardy, with Peter Fonda heavily involved in the look and design. Now, impressionable, 11, I had 2 bikes. I had my racing bike and I had my other bike that I went to school on. All of a sudden, they started making different handlebars called ape hangers, and they were like that. So you could ride your bike like that with ape hangers. That wasn't good enough for me. I went to the tip at Lytham and searched around the tip, which I used to do every week, because what I used to do was find bike parts, and then I'd build a bike and then I'd sell it to somebody at school. So I'd get the parts for free that other people had thrown away, make a bike, sell it, and have some pocket money. But this particular day, I got another set of forks. So the forks come down to your front wheel. I had an idea of extending my forks. Forks I got from the tip, I sawed off. And then I took the wheel off my bike and I put the other forks, which was hollow, onto the end of the forks on my bike. I couldn't weld then when I was 11. So what I did was bash them on with a hammer. And then I had extended forks, so I sat like that on my bike with the front wheel and the forks about yay long. Impressionable kid. But again, desperation's the mother of invention, and I invented my own Harley Davidson bike. So Peter Fonda was heavily involved in the look and the design. He really needed my help, I think. And that motorcycle did something extraordinary. It took the Harley Davidson image and pushed it beyond transport. The Captain America chopper wasn't practical. It wasn't sensible. It wasn't designed for commuting. It was rolling symbolism. It was America painted onto a motorcycle, ridden by a character who was both patriotic and completely alienated from the country around him. That contradiction is why the image became so powerful. The flag was on the fuel tank, but the rider wasn't welcomed by mainstream America. He was being rejected by it. Easy Rider didn't just influence motorcycle culture, it helped define a whole era of counterculture. It helped define a whole era of counterculture cinema. The film is widely remembered as a landmark of late 1960s American film and youth culture, exploring the social tensions, freedom fantasies and disillusionment of the period. And for Harley Davidson, the impact was enormous. The chopper style moved further into the mainstream. Long forks, custom paint, ape hanger bars, sissy bars, stripped down frames. A Harley was no longer just something you bought, it was something you made your own. But there was a strange irony here. Harley Davidson, the company, didn't invent the outlaw chopper image. The riders did, the custom builders did, the films did, the culture did. But Harley became the brand that owned the myth. Then in 1973 came another film with a very different Harley Davidson at its centre. Electra Glide in Blue starred Robert Blake as John Wintergreen, an Arizona motorcycle cop. The film was named after the Harley Davidson Electra Glide, the kind of motorcycle used by traffic police. And this is where Harley Davidson becomes fascinating, because in Easy Rider, the Harley is the machine of the outsider, the rebel, the man escaping the system. But in Electra Glide in Blue, the Harley is the machine of the system, the uniform, the badge, the law. Same brand, same American landscape, completely different meaning in the film. The Electra Glide itself represented another side of Harley Davidson. Big touring machines, police bikes, long distance comfort, authority and presence. Where the Captain America chopper was stripped down and rebellious, the Electra Glide was substantial, upright and official. It was the Harley patrol vehicle, the Harley as state power, the Harley as rolling authority. And that duality is one of the reasons Harley Davidson has lasted so long. It can be the outlaw's bike, it can be the policeman's bike, it can be the soldier's bike, it can be Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator's bike, it can be the businessman's weekend toy. It can be a symbol of freedom, rebellion, duty, nostalgia or status. Very few brands can carry that many meanings at once. But while the Harley image was becoming more powerful in popular culture, the company itself was facing serious trouble. In 1969, Harley Davidson was bought by American Machine and Foundry, better known as AMF. On paper, corporate ownership should have brought stability. In reality, the AMF years became one of the most difficult chapters in Harley Davidson history. Production was streamlined, costs were cut, labour issues followed, quality suffered, and at the same time Japanese manufacturers like Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki and Yamaha were transforming the motorcycle market with reliable, refined and affordable machines. The problem was brutally simple. Harley had the image, but Japan had the quality, and customers noticed. By the late 1970s, Harley Davidson's reputation was in serious trouble. The bikes were still loved, but they were also mocked for quality issues. The company that had built its name on toughness was now fighting to prove it could still build motorcycles properly. The legend was strong, but the business was weak. In 1981, a group of investors, led by Vaughan Beals and Willie G. Davidson, bought Harley Davidson back from AMF for around $80 million. This wasn't just a business transaction, it was a rescue mission. The new leadership focused on improving quality, modernising production and rebuilding trust. They also made a crucial strategic decision. Harley Davidson would not simply copy Japanese motorcycles. Instead, it would lean into what made Harley different: the look, the sound, the heritage, the big V-twin, the emotional connection. While Japanese manufacturers were often chasing refinement and speed, Harley Davidson embraced character and nostalgia. The company understood that people didn't just buy Harleys because they were the fastest or the cheapest. They bought them because they meant something. That emotional strategy helped Harley Davidson recover. The company turned its past into a product, and its customers turned ownership into identity. By the late 1980s and 90s, Harley Davidson had become far more than a motorcycle manufacturer. It was a lifestyle brand. Before that phrase became fashionable, there were Harley jackets, Harley boots, Harley tattoos, Harley clubs, Harley rallies, Harley coffee mugs, Harley belt buckles, Harley everything. The motorcycle was still at the centre, but the brand had expanded into belonging. For many owners, buying a Harley was not simply buying transport. It was buying entrance into a tribe, and that tribe had rituals. The weekend ride, the dealership meet, the long distance rally, the polished chrome, the engine note, the nod from another rider at the lights. Harley had done something extraordinary. It had turned mechanical imperfection into emotional perfection. A Harley didn't need to be the fastest. It didn't need to be the most advanced. It just needed to feel and look like a Harley. And that feeling became incredibly valuable. But every legend eventually faces the same problem. How do you move forward without destroying what people love about the past? Harley Davidson's core customer base aged. Younger riders often wanted lighter, cheaper, more practical motorcycles. Adventure bikes, naked bikes, sports bikes and smaller capacity machines pulled attention away from traditional cruisers. Harley responded with new ideas, new platforms and eventually electric motorcycles like the Livewire, first shown as a prototype in 2014 before becoming part of Harley's attempt to enter the electric age. I think Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman used a couple on one of the Long Way Round, Long Way Down, Long Way Home series, which I quite enjoyed, but I'm not sure they weren't charging them with a diesel generator. This created a philosophical problem. If Harley Davidson is partly defined by the sound and feel of a V-twin engine, what happens when the motorcycle becomes electric? Can a silent Harley still be a Harley? That question cuts right to the heart of the brand, because Harley Davidson has never just been about mobility. It's been about the start-up, the idle, the vibration, the chrome, the presence, the sense that you're not merely riding somewhere. Modern Harley Davidson has to balance heritage with survival. Too much nostalgia and the brand becomes a museum. Too much reinvention and it risks losing the people who kept it alive in the first place. That's the tightrope Harley walks today. The power of Harley Davidson can't be understood without film, because films did what adverts could never do. They gave Harley Davidson mythology. Easy Rider gave Harley the rebel image. The wide open road, the long-haired outsider, the chopper as a symbol of freedom and alienation. Electra Glide in blue gave Harley the opposite image. The uniform rider, the police bike, the lonely officer crossing the desert, carrying authority on two wheels. Together those films showed something important. Harley Davidson was not just one thing. It could represent the man running from the law and the man enforcing the law. It could represent freedom and control, individualism and institution, America's dream and America's contradictions. That's why Harley Davidson became bigger than motorcycles. It became a mirror. People projected their own idea of America onto it. For some, Harley meant rebellion. For others, tradition. For some, it was danger. For others, pride. For some, it was the open road. For others, it was a midlife crisis with chrome and finance payments. But whatever you thought of it, you knew what it was. And that's branding at the highest level. Harley Davidson's greatest achievement may not be a single motorcycle. It may be the fact that the company managed to turn sound into identity. A Harley doesn't simply move, it announces itself. The engine note became a kind of mechanical signature, a rough, uneven, unmistakable pulse that separated from smoother, quieter machines. You always thought they were going to stall. In a world obsessed with efficiency, Harley Davidson sold emotion. In a world of refinement, it sold rawness. And in a world where many vehicles became increasingly anonymous, Harley Davidson remained unmistakable. That's why the brand survived quality crises, marketing changes, foreign competition and cultural shifts. Because for many riders, a Harley was never just the rational choice. It was the emotional one. And emotional purchases are powerful. Harley Davidson began in a shed. It became a manufacturer, then a military supplier, then a police bike, then an outlaw symbol, then a Hollywood icon, then a lifestyle empire, then a heritage brand fighting to modernise without losing its soul. It's been loved, mocked, copied, criticised, worshipped and tattooed onto human skin. And perhaps that's the point. Nobody tattoos the logo of an appliance onto their arm. Harley Davidson became more than machinery because it carried meaning. The bikes were never perfect. The company was never invincible. The image was never simple. But from Easy Rider to Electra Glide in blue, from wartime dispatch riders to weekend cruisers, Harley Davidson became one of the few motorcycle brands that could tell a story before the rider even opened the throttle. A Harley isn't just a motorcycle, it's a sound, a symbol, a contradiction, a piece of American theatre on two wheels. And after more than a century, that's why the name still matters. Because some machines take you somewhere, a Harley Davidson tells the world who you think you are. So what do you think? Is Harley Davidson still the king of motorcycle culture, or has the legend become bigger than the bike themselves? And which film captured Harley best? Easy Rider with the rebel chopper, or Electra Glide in blue with a police motorcycle crossing the desert? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.